Johnson recorded an hour-long television interview with newsman Walter Cronkite at his ranch on January 12, 1973, in which he discussed his legacy, particularly about the civil rights movement. He was still smoking heavily, and told Cronkite that it was better for his heart to smoke than to be nervous. At approximately 3:40 p.m. Central on January 22, 1973, Johnson suffered his final heart attack in his bedroom. He managed to telephone the Secret Service agents on the ranch, who found him still holding the telephone receiver, unconscious and appearing to be dead. They attempted resuscitation, and Johnson was airlifted in one of his planes to San Antonio International Airport, en route to Brooke Army Medical Center. However, cardiologist and Army Colonel George McGranahan pronounced him dead on arrival at the airport at 4:33 p.m. Johnson was 64. Shortly after the former president was pronounced dead, Johnson's press secretary Tom Johnson telephoned Cronkite to tell him. Cronkite was anchoring the CBS Evening News Live at the moment Johnson reached him, which enabled him to report on President Johnson's death as he received direct information. Nixon mentioned Johnson's death in a speech he gave the day after Johnson died, announcing the peace agreement to end the Vietnam War. After lying in repose at his presidential library, Johnson was honored with a state funeral. Texas Congressman J.J. Pickle and former Secretary of State Dean Rusk eulogized him when he lay in state at the Capitol. The funeral took place on January 25 at the National City Christian Church in Washington, D.C., where he had often worshipped as president. The service was presided over by President Nixon and attended by foreign dignitaries, led by Eisaku Sato, who had served as Japanese Prime Minister during Johnson's presidency. Eulogies were given by George Davis, the church's pastor, and W. Marvin Watson, Johnson's last postmaster general and a longtime advisor. Johnson was buried in his family's private cemetery at the house in which he was born. Eulogies were given by former Texas Governor Connally and Billy Graham, the minister who officiated at the burial rites. The state funeral, the last for a president until Richard Nixon's in 1994, was part of an unexpectedly busy week in Washington, beginning with Richard Nixon's second inauguration following the 1972 election. As Johnson died only 2 days after the inauguration, the remainder of the ceremonies surrounding the inauguration were cancelled to allow for a full state funeral, and many of the military men who participated in the inauguration took part in the funeral. It also meant that Johnson's casket traveled the entire length of the Capitol, entering through the Senate wing when taken into the rotunda to lie in state and exiting through the House wing steps due to inauguration construction on the east front steps.